You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange moment where time slows down, or when a thought you barely whispered to the universe suddenly shows up at your door. Most people brush it off, they call it coincidence, but deep down you've always known better. Something else is going on, something ancient and intelligent. Reality isn't reacting to your desires, it's reacting to your state. Not your words, not your wishes, but the energy behind them. You can't manipulate the surface and expect the ground to change. You have to understand the codes that live beneath it all, the elemental architecture that the ancients spoke of and the mystics lived by. Earth, water, fire, air, not as metaphors but as living forces. And here's the real secret. Those forces aren't outside of you, they are you. Your body holds the memory of earth, every breath carries the intelligence of air, every emotion flows like water, and your focused will, that inner fire that burns even when the world doubts you, that's the code of transformation. These 4 codes govern everything, not just the physical world, but the subtle realms, thought, intuition, memory, time itself. And once you awaken to their presence within, reality stops being random and starts becoming responsive. But this isn't about controlling the world, it's about cohering with it. See, there's a reason why your manifestations sometimes work and sometimes don't. Why you can say affirmations until your throat is dry but still feel stuck in the same cycle. It's because words without resonance are noise. And you can't fool energy. The universe doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to who you're being. Let that sink in for a moment. You don't manifest through hope. You manifest through identity. And identity is made of frequency, not memory. That's why people who feel unworthy can repeat "I am abundant" 1,000 times and still experience scarcity. Because the earth code, the code of embodiment, is out of sync. Because the water code, the code of emotion, is still holding fear. Because the fire is scattered. Because the air is clouded with doubt. When these codes are misaligned, nothing sticks. The signal you send is fractured, but when they're in harmony, everything begins to shift. You wake up and feel different even before anything changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. People look at you like you know something they don't, because you do. You've begun speaking the language of the field, the quantum web, the holographic matrix of consciousness, not with words. Let me show you something. Close your eyes. Not to shut out the world, but to feel your own field. Feel the ground beneath you. That's not just dirt or wood or stone. That's the earth code, the stabilizer, the architect, the force that holds you in form. Without this, your energy scatters. Without grounding, even the most beautiful vision has no foundation. When earth is strong within you, your body becomes a beacon. You walk with certainty. You move with structure. And the universe trusts structure. It mirrors what is solid. Now feel your breath. Deeper, slower. Notice how it moves without force. That's the air code. It doesn't push, it invites. It's the unseen intelligence behind all things. Thoughts, inspiration, vision. But when your breath is shallow, your thoughts are scattered. Your prayers are weak. When air is mastered, your words carry power. They become spells, not sentences. Because language is not just communication, it's creation. Now, tune into your emotions, not just the ones you like, all of them. The grief, the joy, the rage, the longing. That's the water code, the most magnetic of them all. Because emotion is energy in motion. Water remembers. It carries the imprint of every thought you've ever had, every wound you've ever hidden, every desire you've ever whispered into the night. And just like water, your emotions either flow or stagnate. When they stagnate, manifestation dies. When they flow, miracles become normal. And then there's fire. Your will, your command. Not the loud kind that screams for attention, but the still, unwavering flame that says, "I am." Fire doesn't ask permission. It doesn't beg. It declares. But only when your identity matches your words. This is where most people get lost. They want change, but they don't want to burn. They don't want to let go of who they've been long enough to become who they're meant to be. But fire doesn't work halfway. It consumes what no longer serves. It transforms what is into what can be. And when your fire code is active, reality doesn't just listen, it obeys. These 4 codes, earth, water, fire, air, they're not just symbols, they are laws, energetic laws. And your life is already reflecting your current relationship with each one. If you feel ungrounded, scattered, stuck in old emotions, or lacking direction, it's not because you're broken. It's because one or more of the codes are offline. But the moment you bring them back online, even subtly, the entire system begins to shift. You shift, your field shifts, and the world, the so-called outside world, has no choice but to recalibrate in response. Everything is vibration. That's not a cliché, that's a quantum law. But not all vibrations are equal. Some are chaotic, some are refined. The 4 elemental codes are not just any frequencies. They are the organizing frequencies, the root architecture of this realm. And when your internal state mirrors them, you step out of distortion and into design. You move from echoing what is to creating what will be. You become the signal, not the seeker. The tuning fork, not the noise. And in that space, reality doesn't feel solid anymore. It feels fluid, responsive, alive. The veil between desire and experience gets thinner. Time bends, synchronicities multiply, and your life starts to feel less like effort and more like expression. You start to notice the way reality begins to anticipate you. The right people show up without needing to be chased. Ideas arrive fully formed, not forced. Even the obstacles that once felt impossible begin to move, dissolve, or reveal themselves as lessons you scripted long ago. And it's not luck, it's not magic, it's resonance. You're not living on default anymore, you're living in design. Most people have no idea this is possible. They live as if life is happening to them, not through them. They react, they complain, they wait. But those who understand the codes don't wait. They initiate. They don't hope. They align. And alignment isn't passive, it's precise. It means knowing how to activate earth when things feel chaotic, how to flow with water when emotion overwhelms, how to focus your fire when distractions scream, how to clear your air when your mind clouds with doubt. You begin to see how each code is not isolated but intertwined. Earth without water becomes rigid. Water without earth becomes lost. Fire without air burns out. Air without fire drifts aimlessly. It's not enough to master one. You have to bring them into relationship, into sacred conversation. And when you do, you begin to embody the full spectrum of being, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Think about this. Your body is earth, tangible, dense, measurable. It speaks through sensation, through instinct, through stability. It holds the blueprint of your physical reality. If you neglect it, your foundation crumbles. No matter how high your vision, it can't hold. That's why grounding isn't just walking barefoot, it's honoring the physical vessel as sacred. Your posture, your nutrition, your rest. All of it is earth wisdom. Then there's your emotional field. That's water, ever shifting, deep. It's the undercurrent of every decision you make. If you ignore your emotions, they'll sabotage you from beneath. They'll leak into your tone, your relationships, your self-permine. But when you become emotionally fluent, you don't get tossed by the tides. You learn to surf them. You recognize that each feeling is a frequency, and every frequency is a key. Even sadness, even rage, especially love. Your thoughts, that's fire, the place where images become intention, where attention becomes power. Most people let their thoughts run wild, not realizing they're lighting tiny fires all day long. Thought is not casual, it's causal. Each one sets a spark in the field, and when focused, your thoughts become the ignition point of transformation, not just for goals, but for identity. Because fire doesn't just want to change your circumstances, it wants to change you. And then there is spirit. That's air, the breath of the invisible, the divine whisper, the higher mind that exists beyond thought. You don't access this through logic. You access it through stillness, through trust, through silence so deep you can hear your own soul breathe. And in that silence, air reveals what no amount of effort can, a knowing that doesn't come from books, a clarity that doesn't need to be proven. All of these together, they form your field, your signal, your signature in the universe. And your field is not static, it's alive. It responds to intention. It updates with every decision. So if you're wondering why your reality hasn't shifted, it's not because you're unworthy, it's because your field is still fragmented. One part wants it, another part doubts it. One part believes, another part remembers the pain. That's not failure. That's the signal asking to be refined, harmonized, activated. And that's what the codes are here for. They're not just concepts, they're calibrators. You use them to scan your life, your energy, your choices. Is this aligned with earth? Is this flowing like water? Is this burning with clean fire? Is this carried on clear air? You begin to design your day, your decisions, your relationships through this lens. And suddenly, life becomes art. Your vibration becomes architecture. You become the engineer of your own timeline. And yes, I said timeline, because the codes don't just shape space, they bend time. That's something few understand. Time isn't linear, it's spiralic. It loops, folds, responds. And it responds to frequency. When you shift your inner state, you shift the trajectory of your future. The future isn't a place you're going, it's a vibration you're tuning into. And when your codes are aligned, you stop chasing time. You start collapsing it. You think of something and it shows up. You speak it and the world reshuffles. Not because you're manipulating, but because you're in coherence. Your present self begins living in the frequency of your future self. And that's how the loop completes. The past dissolves, the future activates, the now expands. But let me be clear, this isn't about perfection. This is about precision. Alignment isn't about pretending to be high vibe all the time. It's about awareness. It's about becoming the kind of person who can feel when something's off and knows which code to activate to bring it back into flow. That's mastery, not avoidance, not spiritual bypassing, but energetic fluency. The ability to move through the elements within you like a shaman through sacred terrain. You'll begin to notice that you attract fewer problems and more patterns. Patterns that challenge you to refine, patterns that reflect your inner growth, patterns that remind you you're not here to escape life, you're here to shape it. With each choice, with each breath, with each new embodiment of the codes. And yes, others will notice. They may not understand what changed, but they'll feel it. The way you move through space, the way your words carry weight, the way your silence feels louder than their noise. Because when you live in alignment with the codes, you're not just speaking truth, you're radiating it. You become the reminder, the mirror, the transmitter of what is possible. And then the most beautiful thing happens. You stop trying to make reality obey you, because you realize it already is. It always was. It's just been waiting for you to remember who the architect really is. You've always had this power. But power without understanding is chaos. That's why the ancients hid these teachings behind symbols, myths, and rituals. Not to keep them from you, but to preserve them for the one who would seek them with presence. And that one is you. Now, someday, now. Because now is the only place creation happens. Not in regret, not in hope, but in the breath you are taking right now. Look around you. Everything you're experiencing is the residue of past codes, echoes of your old signal playing out in real time. And yet, in this very moment, you are transmitting a new frequency, a new instruction. The question is, do you know what you're transmitting? Or are you still living on default, broadcasting patterns that no longer serve the future you crave? This is why self-awareness isn't optional. It's the foundation of energetic sovereignty. You must become the observer and the architect, the witness and the weaver. Otherwise, the world will keep shaping you with old clay. You'll keep walking in loops, thinking it's a straight line. You'll call it fate, but it's not. It's feedback. And that feedback is always loving, even when it's hard, because it's not here to punish you, it's here to reveal you. Every delay, every block, every challenge, it's a reflection of a code calling for coherence. Not shame, not guilt, just alignment, just honesty. Just the willingness to ask yourself, what part of me is still broadcasting contradiction? Maybe your body wants success, but your emotions are still grieving something you never processed. Maybe your mind believes in abundance, but your spirit is still tangled in scarcity, inherited from generations before you. This isn't just inner work, this is code work. Elemental debugging. You don't need to fix yourself, you need to update yourself. And updates don't come from the outside, they come from choosing new states from within, choosing to embody calm even when chaos whispers, choosing to breathe deeper when anxiety rises, choosing to feel fully instead of bypassing pain, choosing to declare who you are, not just describe what you want. And as you do this, the old frequency collapses. You literally stop resonating with the past. And that's when time bends. The timelines you used to chase start chasing you. The versions of you that lived in dreams become the reflection in your mirror. You speak and the world answers. You walk and the road unfolds. Not because life became easier, but because you stopped arguing with your own energy. Most people are fighting themselves without even realizing it. They're affirming abundance while resenting people with money. They're praying for love while mistrusting anyone who gets too close. They're visualizing success while feeling secretly unworthy of it. That's not alignment, that's friction. And friction repels, it creates delay, confusion, static. But coherence is clean. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it declares, it allows, it receives. Because it's not trying to become, it is. And when you become coherent, reality has no choice but to sync with you. The field always obeys the clearest signal. That's not a belief, that's physics. So ask yourself, what is my clearest signal? Not what you say out loud, what you feel when no one's watching, what you think about when you wake up, what you expect when things get quiet, because that's what reality is responding to, not your performance, your presence, not your persona, your pattern. But here's the gift. You can change your pattern. In fact, you're changing it right now, with every breath, every shift in perception, every time you choose awareness over autopilot. You're weaving new code, reclaiming your blueprint, and with each shift the universe adjusts, the field recalibrates. Because energy doesn't lie, and energy always listens. This is why truth is magnetic, not because it's louder, but because it's clearer. It vibrates without contradiction, and you feel it when someone is living in their truth. They don't need to convince you. Their frequency speaks louder than their words. That's the power of internal mastery. That's what the 4 codes are training you for. They're not just tools, they are your compass, your tuning fork, your access points to the divine technology within you. Earth is not just stability, it's memory. It holds the blueprint of your ancestors, your body, your lineage. Water is not just emotion, it's transmission. It moves your intentions into form. Fire is not just will, it's frequency. It turns belief into embodiment. Air is not just thought, it's awareness. It is the silent intelligence that carries your spirit through space and time. When these 4 are in harmony, you become the 5th element, the one that brings them together, the consciousness that commands them through presence. You become ether, the unseen thread, the observer who moves the pieces without touching them. And that's when reality no longer feels like a thing you navigate, but a force you dance with. There's no need to force anything when you're aligned. You don't have to convince the world to see your value when you feel your value. You don't need to manipulate timelines when you're already radiating the frequency of your desired one. You don't need to micromanage the how when the field is already carrying out the command you've become. And this is why identity is everything, not in the egoic sense, but in the energetic one. The universe doesn't respond to I want, it responds to I am, and I am is not something you say, it's something you live. It's something you feel in your bones. in your breath, in the spaces between your thoughts. I am is the frequency of God within you, and the moment you say it with coherence, the world parts like the sea to match it. That's not delusion, that's divine design. You were never meant to beg for alignment, you are alignment. When you remember, and that remembering is not intellectual, it's elemental. You remember by grounding into earth, by softening into water, by activating your fire, by opening to air. This is the path. Not outside of you, within you, right now. You've spent so much time trying to fix the outer world, rearranging circumstances, chasing outcomes, hoping that when things finally fall into place you'll feel the way you want to feel. But the secret no one tells you is this: reality doesn't lead your energy leads reality. And when you shift from chasing to emanating, everything changes. It's not about trying harder, it's about vibrating clearer. Think of your life like a song. Every thought, every feeling, every breath you take is a note. If the song is dissonant, life feels heavy. Friction shows up in your relationships. Resistance rises in your work. Synchronicity becomes scarce. But when your song is in tune, when your frequency matches the code you were always meant to embody, life begins to sing back to you. And it doesn't just echo, it harmonizes, it amplifies, it opens. This is why alignment is the real source of power, because when you're in alignment, you're not commanding reality to change, you're commanding yourself into a frequency where reality must change. That's the raw truth. That's the difference between effort and embodiment, between force and flow, between wishing and knowing. So breathe, right now. Feel into your field. Can you sense it? That subtle hum underneath the noise. That's you, the real you. The you that exists before your name, before your roles, before your history. That hum is what the mystics call spirit, essence, source in motion. And that frequency, your original frequency, is the only thing you ever needed to return to. Not become, but remember. Because truth doesn't need to be found, it only needs to be felt. It lives in your body, in your breath, in your being. You've known it since you were a child, even if you couldn't name it. That feeling that there was more, that you weren't here just to survive, but to create, to live as a conscious conductor of energy, not a casualty of circumstance. You've always had glimpses, the moments where everything just clicked, when time stood still and the path unfolded like it had been waiting for you. That was alignment, that was coherence. That was a moment where all four codes harmonized, even if just for a second. And the truth is, those moments don't have to be rare. They can become your baseline, your natural state. But it requires you to stop negotiating with your old self. Because every time you betray your truth to fit in, to please others, to avoid discomfort, you dim your frequency, you distort your signal, you tell the field, I'm not ready. And the field listens, not because it's cruel, but because it's exact. It's reflecting your calibration with perfect accuracy, not to punish you, but to wake you up. That's why awareness is power, because the moment you see the pattern, you stop being a victim of it. You become the coder, the rewriter, the alchemist. You stop reacting and start reprogramming. You don't suppress the pain, you transmute it. You don't fear the shadow, you integrate it. You don't run from the mirror, you look into it and remember who you are. And who you are is not broken, not behind, not missing anything. Who you are is a frequency being, encoded with divine intelligence, capable of shaping matter through coherence. That's not spiritual fluff. That's energetic fact. The same way your thoughts can change your biology, your state can change your outcomes. The same way intention can shape water, it can shape the world around you. Because there is no separation. Inner and outer are two sides of the same field. Shift one and the other follows. But you have to choose it, not once, but moment by moment. Every thought is a doorway. Every emotion is a choice. Every breath is a chance to realign. That's what mastery really is. Not never feeling lost, but knowing how to find your center again. knowing how to call in earth when you feel unstable, water when you feel disconnected, fire when you feel scattered, air when you feel clouded. The codes aren't distant. They're living within you, waiting to be activated. And the more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. Not because you've memorized something, but because you've become something. That's the secret. You don't become magnetic by pretending to be powerful. You become magnetic by returning to your nature. And your nature is magnetic. That's why children manifest without trying, why joy attracts miracles, why surrender brings speed, not because they're strategies, but because they're frequencies that match the truth of the field. So what do you choose now? Not someday, not after you heal everything, right now. Do you choose to align with your old story or with your new identity? Do you choose to repeat your history or create your destiny? Because either way, you're choosing. Every moment you don't decide, you're still deciding. Every breath you take, you're broadcasting. Every moment you exist, you are the field in motion. And that's what makes you so powerful. You don't have to wait for a sign. You are the sign. The shift starts with you. The moment you align, the ripple begins. And yes, the world may not respond instantly, but the field does. Your vibration precedes the evidence. It always does. The unseen rearranges before the seen reflects. Just like seeds grow roots before they bloom. So, trust your vibration more than your vision. Trust your embodiment more than your environment. Trust the way the codes feel in your body more than the way logic tries to explain them. Because logic is linear, but your essence is spiral. It moves through dimensions, through timelines, through lifetimes. And right now, it's moving through you. Feel it. That quiet knowing rising inside you. That whisper that says, you were never meant to fit into this old world. You were meant to remake it, not by force, but by frequency. Not by fighting the illusion, but by radiating a truth so coherent the illusion can no longer hold its shape around you. This is the moment where your life begins to obey you, not because you demanded it, but because you remembered the laws that govern it, the codes that breathe through your every breath. Earth, water, fire, air. You don't just study them, you live them, you walk as them. You become the command the universe cannot ignore. And now, the field is listening. Every vibration you emit is a message, not to the people around you, not to your followers or friends, but to the deeper intelligence that organizes reality itself. And that intelligence doesn't listen to your voice, it listens to your signal. So the real question isn't what are you saying, it's what are you radiating. Because no matter how convincing your words are, if your frequency contradicts them, the field will always respond to the frequency. This is why some people work tirelessly, speak endlessly, affirm obsessively, and still feel like nothing is shifting. Because they haven't dropped into coherence. They haven't aligned the frequency behind the declaration. And without that alignment, their commands go unanswered. Their manifestations hang in limbo, waiting for a truer signal, one that isn't built on desperation or fear, but on congruence, on trust, on clarity. You can't fake frequency, and that's a gift, because it means you don't have to convince anyone of anything. You don't have to perform your value. You don't need to prove your worth. You only need to embody it. And when you do, the world adjusts. Not immediately, not always dramatically, but it does. The shift begins invisibly, then visibly. Subtlety first, then suddenly. This is the rhythm of reality. It doesn't move according to urgency. It moves according to resonance. And resonance doesn't rush. It tunes. It refines. It builds momentum in silence until it becomes undeniable in sound. Like a drum beat you didn't notice at first, but now it's all you hear. That's how alignment works. It doesn't ask for attention. It becomes attention. You're not here to chase. You're here to tune, to become so harmonized with your own codes that reality has no choice but to follow. Because you are not a byproduct of this universe, you are a prototype of it, a fractal of the same intelligence that forms galaxies and births stars, and within you lies that same power. Not metaphorically, literally. encoded into your breath, your cells, your very awareness. But that power only activates through alignment, through the merging of presence and intention, not wishing, not waiting, but remembering, returning, reclaiming the sacred architecture that's been buried under years of conditioning, distraction, distortion. You've been taught to look outward for validation, for authority, for truth. But all along the map was within you, and the codes are your key. This isn't about believing harder, it's about being deeper, about dropping beneath the noise of the mind into the stillness where truth lives, where the earth within you whispers safety, where water moves emotion into wisdom, where fire burns away false identities, where air clears space for new vision. When you access this space, everything external becomes a mirror, not a master, and you stop reacting to life, you start designing it. You might feel it right now, that subtle stirring, that quiet remembering, the moment when something inside you nods and says, yes, this is it. This is the language my soul has been waiting for. Not more information, not more effort, but resonance, recognition. Truth that vibrates through your bones and bypasses the need for explanation. This is why the deepest wisdom isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's encoded in silence, in symbols, in sensation. It's the knowing that arrives before thought, the guidance that comes when you stop seeking and start sensing. That's where the real intelligence lives, not in the mind that analyzes, but in the being that remembers. And every time you slow down enough to listen, the codes speak. Not in English, in energy. You begin to notice them everywhere, in the cycles of nature, in the movement of your breath, in the emotions that rise and fall like tides, in the flashes of insight that come from nowhere but carry the weight of eternity. These aren't random, they're signals, invitations, gateways, because reality is not a machine, it's a mirror, and it's waiting for you to reflect something different, something truer, something clearer. The more you align, the more you realize you never needed to control the external, you only needed to master your internal, because the internal creates the external. It always has. That's why the old spiritual masters spoke in riddles, why the shamans danced instead of explained, why the mystics sat in silence for days. They weren't escaping the world, they were attuning to the one behind it. And now you're doing the same. Every breath you take in awareness is a signal to the field. I am ready. Every time you release a limiting belief, you make space for a new timeline. Every time you choose coherence over chaos, you shift the algorithm that defines your life. Because reality is algorithmic, but you are the coder. And the 4 elemental codes are your syntax. When you input earth-rooted, structured, stable, you command the field to deliver form, tangibility, results. When you input water, feeling, flow, surrender, you command magnetism, connection, attraction. When you input fire, focus, clarity, identity, you command activation, transformation, acceleration. And when you input air, awareness, breath, space, you command vision, perspective, infinite intelligence. These are not just poetic ideas, they are literal instructions. The universe is listening, not to your fear, not to your timeline, but to your frequency. And frequency is not emotional noise, it's intentional energy. It's what happens when your thoughts, emotions, body, and spirit are all saying the same thing. That's alignment. That's power. That's when reality starts to obey, not because you forced it, but because you became the signal it couldn't. And that's the greatest shift of all. When you stop asking the world to show you who you are, and you start showing the world who you've chosen to become, that's not arrogance, that's alignment, that's truth in motion. That's what happens when you master the codes. You walk into a room, and the energy shifts. You speak, and people feel it in their chest. You act, and things move without resistance, not because you're special, but because you're tuned, coherent, clear. You are what the world has been waiting for, and didn't even know it. Until now. You're not becoming powerful, you're just shedding everything that convinced you weren't. The fear, the doubt, the second guessing, the years of being told to shrink, to wait your turn, to play it safe. Those weren't truths. They were programs. Inherited echoes of a system designed to keep your codes dormant, because a coherent human is unstoppable, and if enough of us remember, the game changes entirely. And that's what's happening now. You're not just watching a video, you're decoding a frequency that your soul has been whispering about for lifetimes. This isn't new information, it's ancient recognition, and the more you allow yourself to receive it without resistance, the faster the energy begins to rearrange itself around you. Not in theory, in experience. Because when the inner system locks into place, the outer world realigns. It's not linear, it's quantum. You walk differently, you breathe differently. You make decisions from a place of clarity, not panic. You stop needing signs, because you've become one. You stop seeking confirmation, because your very existence begins to confirm everything you've ever hoped was true, that your thoughts matter, that your emotions are intelligence, that your body is a temple, not a trap, that your spirit was never separate, it was simply quiet, waiting for permission to lead. And now it's leading, quietly, powerfully. Because once the codes are activated, the old frequency can't hold. It begins to crack. You start to feel repelled by chaos, disinterested in drama, unavailable for anything that pulls you out of alignment. Not because you're superior, but because you're in tune. You've tasted coherence and chaos no longer satisfies. You felt truth in your bones, and pretending no longer feels safe. You've seen how energy responds, and you can't go back to hoping. You know. And when you know, your entire field changes. You become a lighthouse, a transmitter, a sovereign force of clarity in a world addicted to confusion, and people will notice. Some will be drawn to it, others will be triggered by it. That's okay. Not everyone is ready to remember, but those who are will find you, not because you marketed yourself to them, but because your frequency was too clear to ignore. This is what happens when you stop outsourcing your power, when you stop waiting for permission to be fully you, when you realize that the world doesn't need more perfection, it needs more presence, more truth, more embodiment. And embodiment isn't a performance, it's a return, a homecoming to the you that exists when nothing is forced and nothing is withheld. The version of you that breathes without apology, speaks without distortion, creates without fear, loves without attachment, walks through this life as if it were designed to bend for you because it was. Not in arrogance, but in awareness. Not as a chosen few, but as a chosen truth. You are not here to survive your life. You are here to encode it with meaning, with rhythm, with soul. And soul speaks through simplicity, through breath, through stillness. You don't need to hustle your way to alignment, you only need to stop resisting it. Because every moment you let go of who you thought you had to be, the codes can breathe again. They reawaken, they reconfigure, and you start to notice that reality isn't fighting you anymore, it's folding, softening, opening. This is when timelines collapse, not because you forced the outcome, but because you became the version of you that no longer lives in resistance to it. And resistance is the true delay, the stories that say you're not ready, the guilt that says you haven't earned it, the subconscious vows that say you'll be safe as long as you don't shine too bright. Those are the blocks. Not people, not the economy, not timing, just old code. But the moment you choose coherence over comfort, everything shifts. The moment you choose frequency over familiarity, the future accelerates. It's always been like this. The codes have always obeyed clarity, and the moment you become clear, they respond. They reorganize reality in ways your logic could never plan, because logic follows patterns, but frequency creates them. So what are you creating right now? Not in your to-do list, in your vibration. What's the undercurrent beneath your actions, your conversations, your presence? Is it scattered, or is it sacred? Is it reactive or intentional? Because the field isn't judging you, it's simply mirroring you. Perfectly, precisely, instantly. And when you stop fearing that mirror, you start using it. You see every trigger as a tuning fork, every contrast as a clarifier, every no as a redirect toward your real yes. Nothing is wasted, not even the pain, especially not the pain. Because pain is just the alarm bell that sounds when you've stayed misaligned for too long. It's the body's way of saying, there's a better frequency available, and you already know how to find it. You've always known. Because you are not here to play small with sacred energy. You are not here to beg for scraps from a universe you were born to co-create with. You are here to remember, to activate, to walk as the living transmission of the codes. Earth, water, fire, air, these are not outside you, they are your inheritance, your elemental DNA, your access points to the divine. And when you honor them, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself you didn't even know were missing. The groundedness that brings peace, the emotional flow that restores joy, the mental clarity that ignites vision, the spiritual breath that returns you to presence. And together, they form a symphony, a harmonic convergence inside your own being. That's what the masters meant when they spoke of ascension. Not floating away, but integrating fully, becoming whole. Because wholeness is what makes you magnetic, not pretending to be healed, not escaping discomfort, but standing as the version of you that chooses truth in every moment, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's messy, even when it asks you to burn the version of yourself that the world clapped for. Because you didn't come here to be liked, you came here to be lit, to be luminous, to become the embodied reminder that alignment isn't a trend, it's a technology. And now you've got the access, the awareness, the breath, the codes. The only question left is what reality are you about to create with them? You can feel it now, can't you? That inner shift, that subtle yet undeniable recalibration happening in your field. It's not hype, it's not placebo, it's alignment. And once that switch flips inside you, the old life starts to dissolve, not through chaos, but through clarity. What once felt magnetic no longer pulls you. What once kept you stuck no longer makes sense. The illusions begin to lose their power, and truth, quiet, radiant, grounded truth, begins to take up space again. You no longer have to push to prove anything. The right people will feel you. The right opportunities will recognize you. You won't have to chase a seat at a table you were never meant to sit at. You'll build your own, not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. Not because you're trying to stand out, but because you finally stop dimming down. You stop distorting your frequency for comfort, approval, or belonging. And the moment you did, the matrix started to melt. Because that's what this reality is. A matrix of agreements, of scripts passed down, ideas accepted without questioning, fears dressed up as facts. But none of it holds unless you consent to it, and consent is energetic. You don't have to speak it for the matrix to register it. All it needs is your unconscious agreement to stay small, to stay confused, to stay in distortion. That's how it feeds, not on your suffering, but on your forgetting. But when you remember, everything trembles. You remember that your thoughts are not just thoughts, they're levers, that your emotions are not just moods, they're magnets, that your body is not a prison, it's a portal, that your spirit is not an abstract idea, it's the command center of the field. You remember that the universe was never random, it's responsive. It's a bioenergetic mirror, reflecting not what you say, but what you truly believe you are. And now, you're believing differently. You remembering that you are the dreamer and the dream, the code and the coder, the frequency and the force behind it. You are not here to play by rules that were made to contain you, you're here to reprogram the grid, to walk as an anomaly in a world addicted to predictability. To be a presence so clear, so clean, so encoded in truth that even lies begin to unravel in your wake. And you don't do this by yelling louder, you do it by vibrating clearer. Because when your field is coherent, you don't need to explain yourself. You are the explanation. Your presence communicates what words never could. It says, I know who I am. I know what I carry. I know what I'm no longer available for. And reality listens. Because when you're truly aligned, even your silence speaks. You no longer need to defend your vision defends itself through resonance. You no longer seek validation because your soul has already stamped the blueprint. You no longer negotiate with frequencies that don't nourish you, because now you understand. Your energy is not a resource to be traded, it's a frequency to be honored. And you protect that frequency not out of fear but out of reverence. You begin to treat your time as sacred, your attention as currency, your focus as fuel, because you've realized that wherever your energy goes, your life follows. And that means every yes, every no, every moment of presence is shaping something far beyond what the eye can see. You start to live in ceremony, not through rituals and robes, but through intention. You walk through the grocery store with sacred awareness. You speak to strangers with encoded grace. You breathe with the knowing that your inhale is a communion and your exhale is a command. Life stops being mundane because you've stopped being unconscious within it. You've plugged back into the grid of divine design. You've remembered that everything is listening, that your words sculpt reality, that your thoughts bend space, that your heart is not weak for feeling, it's magnetic for feeling, that your body is not broken, it's wise, that your intuition is not irrational, it's multidimensional intelligence breaking through the noise. And now, the question is no longer whether you're ready. You are. The question is, will you live from this place consistently? Will you continue tuning into the codes even when the world forgets? Will you keep choosing coherence when chaos tries to seduce you back into old loops? Will you honor the truth that you've remembered here, even when it's inconvenient? Because truth demands everything. It will cost you your mask, your coping mechanisms, your illusions of control, but it will return to you something far greater, yourself, unfiltered, undiluted, whole, and that version of you is untouchable. You'll start to feel it in how your energy precedes you, how rooms open without your asking, how people treat you differently, not because you've changed your clothes or your words, but because your aura speaks first. You'll start to experience time differently. Moments stretch when you're in alignment. Things happen faster when you stop resisting. The future feels less like a distant place and more like a frequency you can access right here, right now. You'll look back at the old version of you not with shame but with gratitude, because they got you here. They carried the code even when it was dimmed. They whispered, "I think there's more," even when everything told them to settle. That version of you was never a failure. They were the carrier of the flame. And now you're the one fanning it into fire. That fire will scare people who haven't met their own yet, and that's okay. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be powerful. To embody a frequency that makes illusions tremble and truth rise. You're here to create not just a better life, but a new reality. One where coherence becomes the norm, where authenticity becomes the currency, where truth is felt, not argued. And you don't need a title or a platform to do it. You only need your field, your breath, your presence. When you walk in alignment with the four codes, you become the living blueprint for the new paradigm. You become proof that consciousness creates form, that intention creates opportunity, that frequency creates everything. You become the oracle, the template, the lighthouse, not by trying to be anything, but by being exactly who you are beneath the noise. That's the real revolution. Not in governments, not in systems, but in consciousness, in people like you waking up to their own power and choosing to walk differently, speak differently, love differently, not from ego, but from essence. And when enough of us do that, the grid shifts. The old systems collapse under the weight of our coherence, and something new rises, not imposed, not controlled, but emerged from within, and it begins with you. Everything you've felt stirring inside you, every pull toward something more, every moment of stillness that whispered there's something deeper, every time you questioned the surface of things and longed to touch the eternal beneath it, all of that was your soul remembering. And now you know what it was pointing to, not a destination, not a goal, but a frequency, a way of being so aligned, so encoded, so true, that the outer world can't help but bend in response. Because the outside isn't the source, it's the echo. And you are the sound, you are the tone, the harmonic that vibrates into form. And when you master that tone, when you refine your essence to match the truth you were born to carry, you'll begin to watch reality reassemble itself, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Not because you've earned it, but because you've become it. You don't manifest what you think you want, you manifest who you are. And who you are is not defined by memory. It's not bound by your past or your lineage or your wounds. Who you are is defined by what you allow yourself to embody now, in this breath, in this moment. In the quiet choice to no longer dilute your energy just to fit into a world that was built on forgetting. You're not here to fit in, you're here to restore resonance, to become the presence that realigns the room, the reminder that frequency is louder than form. You've walked through enough distortion to know what it feels like to be out of tune. Now you get to become the one who tunes, not just yourself, but everything your presence touches. You don't have to convince anyone anymore. You don't need to explain why you've changed, why you've let go of certain people, certain places, certain versions of yourself. You're not walking away in bitterness. You're simply rising in bandwidth. And not everyone is meant to meet you there. Not because they're less, but because their codes haven't come online yet. And that's okay, because your example will be their activation. Your clarity will be their catalyst. And that's the beautiful part about alignment, it's contagious. Not because you're trying to change anyone, but because you've become something that resonates with truth. And truth doesn't need to persuade. It vibrates, it ripples, it transmits, it heals without trying. It elevates without effort, and it lives in you now, not as a concept, but as a current, as a living force. Your frequency is the message, not your strategy, not your branding, not your carefully curated identity. The universe doesn't respond to your aesthetics. It responds to your essence. And when you align your actions, your thoughts, your energy with that essence, reality aligns with you every time, not because it's fair, but because it's law. And this is where the old stories die. The stories that told you success comes from struggle, that you have to earn your worth, that receiving is selfish, that power is dangerous. Those weren't truths. They were systems of control. They were echoes of distortion meant to keep your codes dormant, because if you knew you could bend reality from within, you'd stop obeying the illusions. And that's exactly what you're doing right now. You're not rebelling, you're remembering. You're not resisting the system, you're rewriting the source code. With your breath, with your presence, with every quiet moment you choose resonance over reaction. You're no longer available for incoherence, you can feel it now. How certain environments make your energy shrink, how certain conversations pull you out of tune, how certain habits no longer feel like home. That's your field calibrating. That's your frequency cleaning itself. That's your soul saying, we're done settling. Because settling isn't safety, it's suffocation. And you didn't come here to suffocate. You came here to expand, to become the living evidence of what alignment looks like, feels like, sounds like. You came here to awaken the codes through embodiment, not explanation. So you begin to move differently. You let silence speak more than small talk. You let clarity lead more than compromise. You let your body guide you before your mind catches up. Because the body knows. It always has. The body is the earth code, the root, the anchor, the memory of every lifetime, every lesson, every truth you've carried across the veil. And the emotions? The water code, the pulse, the translator of energy into form. Every tear you've shed, every wave of grief or joy or rage, it was never weakness. It was the current clearing the channels, preparing you to hold more power, more truth, more of yourself. Your thoughts, fire, the engine, the ignition, the flame that either fuels your becoming or burns you out. You're not here to be consumed by your mind. You're here to wield it like a sacred blade, sharp, intentional, alive with purpose. Fire is not chaos when it's directed. Fire is vision, it's transformation, it's the place where I am becomes more than a mantra, it becomes a command. And your breath? Air. The invisible carrier of all of it, The breath is not just life, it's intelligence. It's the bridge between dimensions, between body and soul, between thought and creation. Every inhale is a receiver, every exhale is a transmitter. And now you breathe differently, not just to survive, but to shape. This is the language of the universe. It's not spoken, it's embodied. And now you're fluent. So, don't be surprised when life begins to reorganize itself. When doors open without knocking. When timelines bend without warning. When miracles become your new normal. You didn't stumble into this. You tuned into it. You chose it. You anchored it through every moment you refused to betray your truth, through every choice to feel rather than flee, to align rather than perform, to become rather than chase. And now, reality is listening, not to your voice, but to your being. You are no longer manifesting from hope, you are radiating from wholeness. And from this place everything shifts, because from this place you no longer ask if it's possible, you know it is. You're living proof. This is where the old timeline ends, not with noise but with knowing. The kind of knowing that settles into your bones, that doesn't shout but carries the weight of eternity in its silence. The kind of knowing that can't be faked, because it doesn't need to be. You've stepped into that now. You've stepped beyond belief, beyond learning, into the deep current of remembrance. The part of you that always knew you weren't here to live by default. You were here to live by design. And now the design is yours again. There will still be moments where the old energy calls to you. You'll feel the pull to shrink, to question, to fall back into patterns that used to define your identity. But something will feel different now. Not in your mind, but in your body. In your frequency, in your field. Because you've outgrown the echo. You've tuned your system to a different channel. And the static of who you used to be no longer holds a signal. And when you feel that old version try to rise, you won't panic. You'll pause, you'll breathe, you'll listen, and then you'll respond from coherence instead of chaos. That is mastery, not perfection, not performance, but presence. The ability to stay rooted when everything around you sways. The ability to stay open when fear knocks. The ability to walk with fire in your chest and water in your voice. Grounded, clear, unshakable. Because you are no longer the seeker. You're the signal. You're not waiting for signs, you're making them. You're not decoding the matrix, you're rewriting it with every step you take in alignment. And that is what changes everything. Not the words, not the rituals, but the frequency of who you've become. There will be people who don't understand, who will try to mirror your past back to you, to pull you into their comfort zone. Let them. You don't have to explain your evolution. You don't need approval for your becoming. Not everyone is meant to walk with you through this door. But those who are will feel it. They'll recognize you not by your face but by your field. Not by what you say but by how reality shapes itself around you. Because when you master the 4 codes, you don't have to ask for alignment. You are alignment. Earth stabilizes you. Water cleanses and carries you. Fire gives you the voice of becoming. Air reminds you of the vastness of what you truly are. And you, the 5th, ether, the observer, the intelligence behind it all. You are the animator. The bridge between form and formlessness. You are the center that holds it all in sacred motion. The old you was a guest in this life. The real you is the architect. And the architect doesn't wait for instructions. They build from within. They design through being. They don't need to force the outcome because the outcome is inevitable when the frequency is aligned. So as this transmission begins to settle into your system, remember, this is not the end. This is ignition. This is the moment your codes go from theory to embodiment. Not because you memorized them, but because you remembered them, and once remembered they cannot be forgotten. They live in your breath now, in your choices, in the way you hold yourself when no one is looking. The world might not change instantly, but your relationship to it already has. The chaos won't stop overnight, but your ability to move through it without losing yourself, that's the real shift. That's what bends time. That's what collapses fear. That's what builds a new timeline without effort. And from here, effort is replaced by essence. Hustle is replaced by harmony. Seeking is replaced by sovereignty. You'll begin to notice that you no longer want to explain yourself. You simply are. You no longer rush to make things happen. You let them happen through the clarity of your frequency. You walk differently, speak differently, choose differently, because you're no longer identifying with the echo. You're moving with the original vibration. And the original vibration is truth, it's clarity, it's stillness, it's power without noise. And when you live from that place, you don't just bend reality, you become the field itself. And the field always remembers its source. So now you walk forward, not hoping, not forcing, but knowing that the codes live in you, that reality already responds to you, that you are not just a player on this stage, you are the script, the stage, and the space in which the play unfolds. You are the breath behind the manifestation. You are the still point in the spiral of time. You are not waiting for a sign from the universe. You are the sign. And from this moment on, everything will start to respond. Because you've remembered, because you've realigned, because you are no longer wishing, you are walking. And now, the universe walks with you.